that's a 5-year, 10-year cycle. But if a coach is doing well, that's actually a 30, 40-year cycle. So I think you have many, many good things happen. So I think athlete-centric is very critical, but a coach-led or a person who knows what it is needed, I think is supremely important. I think that's how I would put up the ecosystem.
Yeah, in fact, fantastically, in fact, put Gopiji. I'll leave, in fact, the thread that has been left open as regards the infrastructure. You said that is not the most important one. In fact, coaching is the most important thing, and athlete welfare is the most important one. So we'll come back to that point again. Right now in our midst, we are having one of the most prominent high-performance expert in India. She is a mind coach, and her profile speaks so high of she being a strategist. She is an innovator in sports, and one of the best sports psychologists that we are having in India right now. You have mostly been associated with 10 other countries apart from India, wherein you have been working with most of the Olympic medalists, Commonwealth medalists, and other areas. And your association with Indian sports is just a couple of years, maybe just 3 years. So just wanted to know, we have always been speaking of two areas. One is the elite level and one is the grassroots level. And when it comes to the grassroots, in fact, in one of your interviews, you happened to say that at grassroots, you think more with your heart and not with your head. So the mindset is actually very different at the grassroots as compared to the elite. So with lots of kids being groomed and lots of athletes, the median age coming down below 20s, and mostly they being in their teens and achieving the puberties and all, with those physiological changes and all, like what is that advocacy that is there in terms of the psychological counseling and support that an athlete requires at the grassroots level?
So thank you so much for giving this opportunity to share what I might have learned. And that's a very important question you asked. So since Youth Olympic Games, Asian Youth Games, which started in 2009 and 2010, which Singapore hosted inaugurally, the age of an elite athlete has drastically dropped, right? Most of them, at least in my experience since 2016 Rio, what I've consistently seen is the work, I work on Olympic cycles with each of my clients. So the new applications or requests I get is children who are all of 10 years, 11 years. Some haven't even attained puberty or, are pre-pubertal. And well, that's a challenge for the entire world. So we can no longer talk in terms of elite or grassroots. It's important to talk about the age groups right now, right? So what is the age group we are addressing? What are the experiences? What is the ecosystem around them? Money will give us infrastructure, right? Money will provide that. So like Gopi was talking about, what are the systems, what are the processes? How do we kind of build them in such a way that they understand children, right? Rather than calling them young athletes, it's important we say that they're children. So more than often, if you look at the statistics of those who have made it to Olympic medals and represented their nations consistently and have a long longevity in sports and have consistently performed, these were individuals who enjoyed sport. They played with their heart, correct? And when you play with your heart, you go all out, full of motivation, nothing to lose, right? But then, of course, the moment they start shining, they become an object of interest for different, parts of the ecosystem you're in, right? So, and then, of course, given that they're young, in this case, you mentioned teenagers, their ego is fragile, their hormones are raging, And somewhere along the way, while the ecosystem is aligning its self-esteem and self-worth on the outcomes of their endeavors, the children also start doing that. And that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous for their well-being, that's dangerous for their longevity as well, right? Now, where does sports psychology feature? One is in educating the system to understand the psychological aspects to a child, educating the coaches to also understand what is in them psychologically that kind of helps them enjoy their roles, and then also impart that to their athletes. And happy coaches have different conversations. There's nothing wrong in encouraging athletes to push their limits. There's nothing wrong at all. If we say this is competitive sport, then outcome will matter. But the journey to the outcome, that is where some decisions need to be made, correct? And ultimately, no matter whether you're grassroots or elite, at the end of the day, when you're performing, for your technique and tactic and your physicality to work for you, your mentality matters, right? Now, keeping that as the central focus, one are the coaches, which is their immediate, environment around them. And I completely agree with Gopi when he mentions, it has to be athlete-centered but coach-driven. But then the next round of people, which is where you get your sports scientists. So are they psychologically aligned? Do they understand what a child is? Do they understand safety for them? Do they understand physiological changes? Do they understand their needs, right? Do they understand how to map the progress of their talent? For countries like China, for example, right? Yes, Chinese children predominantly have taken up specialization and super specialization early. But what I see, especially say in the last 10, 15 years, is the trends have changed over there too. So while they're looking at talent identification, they're also looking at markers, not so much physically, but also markers in terms of, does a child understand what they're getting into, right? All children have resilience, but it's the system that can boost that resilience or take away from it. This is when you have your administrators, the protectors of system, the ones who decide on the system, who come in place. So do they understand a child? Do they understand the development? Because when I talk about the mind getting impacted, even something as simple as stress, you have physical impact of it, you have physiological impact for it, right? When your brain registers stress, your pupils dilate, you can't see clearly, you can't recall memory because your heart rate variability is high, and the neurotransmitters that carry oxygen to your brain, they drop drastically. You have physiological changes in terms of your saliva production, your bile juice production, and then of course you have your small muscles and the bigger muscles that become tight, correct? So mentality and thinking matter. So while we are working on performance, it's also important to help them understand the human behind the performer, understand that human, understand what is their responsibility towards it, and more importantly, not allow them to focus purely on sport. Have other endeavors on the side, education, and what have you. So when we look at it holistically at the grassroots level, then you don't have to do a lot of fixing when they become elite. Because you're building a crop that is very strong, that will see the test of time. But more importantly, you're building not just mentally resilient, physically resilient, and those that are not dependent on the ecosystem to see them forward, right? So it has to be done not just holistically, but also with thought. Yes, I might have been exposed to other countries and their systems, but India is very different from most other systems. Our cultures, our traditions, we need to see what best methods we can adopt within the Indian system. Because emotionally, we are very, very different from the top 10 countries in the world. If you talk about our shooters, if you were to take the heart rate variabilities at which our top shooters shoot and compare to them to a China or a Europe, you see that we shoot very, very well when our heart rate is very high, correct? But then, when you're managing that heart rate, when you're perhaps talking to yourself or breathing and the heart rate drops drastically, is your body able to cope with it? And that is where your pranayama comes into place. So, first of all, really understanding the holistic part of it, but also looking at the foundational basic things. If that is strong, then you're starting strong. And then you don't have to do a lot of,
Yeah, a new
changes when it
perspective
matters.
has been offered in terms of the Indian system that needs to be in place, especially the pranayama that you have mentioned, the sporting culture that India is having. In fact, our diet is also very different, so our genetics are different. So we'll come to that point. In fact, the fragile egos that you have spoken of and the motivation, I guess Gopiji is having, definitely will have a say on some of the motivational aspects there. Coming to one of the disciplines which is having the highest medal category, events, in fact, when it comes to the number of events that it hosts, that is aquatics. Nearly 50 odd medals are there for taking. It spreads across swimming, diving, water polo, and so many other things. And one of the most decorated Olympian, Mr. Phelps, also has consecutively for the 4 Olympic cycles, I guess, like he was there. So a lot has been advocated in the swimming arena, as Adilji has also pointed out, that along with athletics being the mother discipline, swimming is also one of the disciplines which is quite vast and robust. So with the way that how we are, and specifically in our context, if you have observed in the presentation that my colleague has made, we have 30 districts and we are having 33 numbers of pools. In almost every district we are having a pool, multiple numbers of pools are there. Each and every one of it is of a Olympic size pool. There is a very robust pay and play program that we are running in collaboration with JSW. So given such a scenario, like what is that as a nation, where are we heading? And you have made a very beautiful analysis in one of the webinars that I have seen. In Olympics, for the past like century or so, the total number of medals are only 28, and swimming has hardly contributed any. And come to Asian Games, it is a 50 to 60 odd year journey, and there also I think swimming has fared not so well. That being the case, like what is that India as a nation has to do, and Odisha as a state where we have invested so heavily in swimming? So what is the way forward for us?
Thank you. Thank you for having me also. You have a new and a great tagline, Think India, Think Odisha. And that's a transition from the best kept secret. So logically you've done well. I would say that Odisha has led sports in infrastructure creation. Not just creation, but high quality infrastructure creation. So that's a huge kudos to the thinking and the people who are behind this. You mentioned the medal strategy for Odisha or in India at the world level as well as nationally. See, I'll speak from a context of aquatic sports and more from the context of swimming also, because swimming is a sport where the peak performance, and I would imagine that it is true for a lot of other sports, but in swimming particularly, the peak performance age is between 22 to 26. And we are unable to retain our athletes' performance and progress them towards their trajectories. This has been part of a lot of our presentations to the Government of India also. Recently, in 2025, we published the top 20 rankings across all age groups, open total rankings for both men and women for all events. And a few things jump out immediately if somebody is willing to look at that. That in any event, the gap between the first and the 20th rank is huge in terms of time. Secondly, the gap between the first 2-3 ranked athletes in India and the world standards that are required to win medals at that level are also huge. Thirdly, in an event where, as I said, you have to peak between 22 to 26, the top 20 ranked athletes in men and women across all events in swimming are under 20. So you can imagine what is happening to the athletes who are older than 20. I mean, they're not in the system, either their performance is dropping off, and what is causing this? There are no shortcuts in swimming. We have to follow a global long-term athlete development pathway. And there are systemic challenges and structural challenges which is preventing this from happening. I mean, early performance syndrome has almost set into our culture, and it is very difficult to change this. We are making all efforts over the last 2-3 years as a federation to inculcate this. But we need the support of the government, we need the support of the whole ecosystem. Where does it meet these challenges? So firstly and foremostly in India, when we are all talking about performance at the world level, in our talks we do not look at academics and career transition. So when the athlete in a sport has to peak beyond 22, they hit these milestones of 10th standard, 12th standard, the college. God forbid, they try to think in terms of STEM education, engineering, medical, they have to forget sport. Or at least that is a perception for many sports where it requires a lot of training rigor. I'm sure Gopi would agree, I don't know how many hours badminton athletes train, but swimming athletes have to train a minimum 4 to 5 hours a day, plus the gym. So at that level, when they start hitting that phase of their career, when they 15 plus, 16 plus, when they have to post-puberty start training harder, the load is so high, so they have to so there is no dual career pathway. So there is some structural interventions that we have suggested to Government of India also. We have a great open schooling system. We need to make it popular. We need to let the parents and the athletes know that it is not a compromise, not going to a physical school. So a lot can be said about that. Another areas are competition priorities of clubs and coaches. So for them, I've always been saying that unlike Odisha, where you have a corporate backing you and the coaches get a salary, the entire ecosystem in India is club driven, and club gets revenue from paying parents. So if that club or that coach is not showing medals at the junior ages, they are not going to get more customers. So any coach who is trying to do the right thing by using a long-term athlete development pathway with the right kind of markers is doing himself a disservice, because he is the one who brings food to the table. Federations, it's not an earning or a revenue proposition for anybody in the ecosystem except the coach. And unless the coach is suitably incentivized to be able to guide the parents that this is the way to go, we are fighting against the current. Another thing is over-glorifying young athletes. Sanjana briefly touched upon it. We have launched something called a National Talent Pool Development Program, primarily focusing on 12 to 17-year-olds or 12 to 19-year-olds, with the idea that they start understanding that instead of that medal, the time they clocked at that particular age in context to the global standards of world-class athletes at that age is more important than that medal. And slowly and steadily we are trying to turn the tide through this program. I'm glad to share that even the Government of India in SAI is now bought into that program, is going to give it a more formal status. But just to give context, first time ever a Odisha boy won medals at the Junior National Championship in Gujarat, Ahmedabad last year. First ever. And when he arrived in Odisha, he was garlanded at the airport, and he was a 14-year-old. And went on a truck through the city with drums and whatnot. When we do this National Talent Pool Development Program, we go and conduct online sessions with the kid, the coach, and the parents. First thing we told them that congratulate let that happen, but don't let that go to your head. Because that's the last and the first thing that will, ruin your career. You have to think big. So I think Odisha is strategically well placed not to think of Indian medal strategy. Global medal strategy is what you should be thinking of, because you have all the things that you need.
Yeah,
What we need is a cultural change.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
it's the benchmarking that needs to be taken care of rather than over glorifying the athletes and their achievements. And a common understanding that is coming out here is about the coaches development and the role of coaches in achieving these medals and all. You have been quite critical of late about the most premier coaching institute that is present there in India, NIS Patiala. As regards the curriculum, as regards the quality of people applying, going for the coaching there. At the same time, under your leadership as President AFI, around like 600 odd districts have come to the fold as an affiliate unit, and the requirement of the coaches there seems the numbers are huge. It's almost like 10,000 numbers of coaches are needed across India, and here we also require around more than 1,000 to 2,000 odd coaches. So given such a very skewed atmosphere here where there is a huge demand, whereas the supply constraints are there as regards the quantity and as regards the quality, like what is that as a state that we need to do so that the contribution to the athletes in terms of coaching would be better?
So, like we just discussed, one, you have world-class infrastructure. Two, I'm told you're building 314 blocks, you're building infrastructure. 14. Yeah, 314. You're building, yeah, that's excellent. Now what needs to happen is you need to introduce good coaching and sports science. Now you cannot have sports science in 314 centers. So you can do a hub and spoke model. It's possible to do a hub and spoke model, but you need sports science, you need coaching. Now, I've been critical, and he's sitting there, he knows very well my criticism. He's been ED at Patiala. The problem is the curriculum. The problem is the curriculum is not upgraded enough as it should be. Two, what is going in and what is coming out is not of great quality. The people who are becoming coaches, who becomes a coach? Anybody who has anything better to do in life will do that. The last resort is to become coach, so you'll get a government job in one of your 314 districts or 30 districts or whatever. So that is the problem. For example, the difference between LNCP, Trivandrum and Patiala is great. The people who are going in there are far better. But I'm not, that system is, I'm not discussing that system. We've been doing a lot of discussion and that is getting overhauled. But then every federation has a coaching program of their international federation. Now I pulled out some figures for Odisha. Let me give you those figures. There is pre-level 1, level 1, level 2, level 3. We have, Athletic Federation has 3,800 pre-level 1 coaches. Only 128 are from Odisha. They have to apply and take the course, but they don't do it. Level 1, 1,380. Only 14 are from Odisha. Level 2, 328, 5 are from Odisha. And level 3, there are 46, only 1 is from Odisha. Now this means there is a serious issue. You don't have coaches. You really need to ensure, and Athletic Federation is ready to help you. We can do courses specially for Odisha if required. Actually, I sent you also a mail the other day on coaches development program. So we really, there is also the AISTS program which is the Olympic program for development. Now, these are available, but it is the government to say that we push your people to say, go and do these. So, that is the issue. And unless we get, see, sports is a science. I've said that 1,000 times. Sports is biomechanics, biochemistry, kinesiology, physiology, etc., etc. Unless you can understand that, nutrition, if you can't understand basic science, you cannot become a good coach. Now, why, when I say people who are going into Patiala compared to people who are going into LNCP Trivandrum, the people in Patiala that I have interacted with have very, very little sports knowledge. A lot of them are from the north of India, which is wrestlers, boxers, the big boys, who can get in because of their good sports, because they've done very well in their sporting careers, but have no education background. Now, just because somebody could run fast from point A to point B, or somebody could kick a ball well, does not become a good coach. It's education. And that is why I have 7 foreign coaches. Every single coach has produced an Olympic medalist. So you need to, if you have to fight at that level, then you need to bring coaches of that level. The sad part is our Indian coaches are not learning from them. The Indian coaches are trying to discourage the athletes from going to them because they get exposed themselves of the coaching that they had done earlier because of the quality of coaching that is being imparted by these experts. Each of them has a doctorate in sports science. So this is the gap, and we need to work hard to fill this gap. That is very important.
Yes, sir. In fact, the coaches requirement that we are having and the gap that you have spoken of, and quite famously that you have referred the Massiers and all as glorified Malishwalas, in fact, like the way that they have been.
Yeah, I call them Malishwalas. They are not really, I mean, the physio, between, let's take the 100 meters, between the semi-final and the final at the World Championship Olympic Games is 90 minutes. No coach can do anything to the athlete. It is the physio and the masseur that will put the athlete on the track and make him win. The coach cannot make him win. So again, that's why I keep saying ecosystem. You need the nutritionist, you need the mind trainer, you need the psychologist, you need that whole ecosystem.
The center being the sports science in whole of this one, so that is what it is being. So we'll come to the sustainable model maybe because buying coaches, hiring foreign coaches, I don't know for how long it can continue and how long we can keep investing till the time we are there. But coming again to the infrastructure, we have like in Odisha 324 badminton courts are there. During your initial days of training and all, I remember you saying that there were hardly 3 courts in whole of Hyderabad, and you happen to be very closely residing to Lal Bahadur Stadium. So for that reason, you are lucky enough to go there and train yourself. And right now, there are more than 2,000 odd courts that are present. In Odisha itself, with such huge infrastructure that we are having, 324 is, I don't think like no other state is having such big infra. We are also thinking of coming up with a grassroots program for badminton. All being said, predominantly we see that most of the medalists are coming from either from your academy at Gachibowli or say the other ones in Padukone Academy in Bangalore. So where exactly does government actually stand here? Does it mean that there should be more of private investment, private players needs to run these academies, or is there role for the government, and or do we need to take a step back and lease out this to the private players? Is there any question of efficiency that is there in running this program?
Well, I don't, it's a deeper, because I think some of the points which have come up, which Adil sir has said, Choksi has said, or Sanjana has, these are fundamentally the most important things. Culturally, where are we? Systemically, where are we? And what it basically comes down to is a set of motivated people with the knowledge and who have a role in the ecosystem to be able to do it. The sad reality of our scenario is that we are people who are pretty strong in federations, right? So Adil sir or Choksi ji or myself and Sanjana, we are on platforms which matter. But still, the systemic change takes a lot of time. And I know Adil sir has been shouting at the top of his voice, trying to change these things, but these things are very slow to happen. And we sometimes tend to go up and down in this ecosystem quite a bit. And new officials, new people, new policies actually make us go back and forth, and we are just roaming around in the same place. And with only cosmetic changes to schemes, which are not necessarily taking us forward. That is one fundamental issue which is important. Having said that, there's no easy answer. But what would be important for me is how many kids are playing, and I think I'll come back to what Sanjana has spoken about. Children playing sport for fun, for recreation. Coming to Choksi sir's point, saying that with a long-term athlete development model in place, which comes out because the coach there is not judged by his junior athlete doing well, but he's judged by his following the philosophy of long-term athlete development. And that depends on what are the medals. If you're going to celebrate an under-11 winner and make him a star, then you will have age fraud, or you will have, in some cases, doping issues or overtraining issues, because that is what helps the coach come through. So I think our coaches' evaluation points have to change. The second fundamental issue is coach development a motivation issue, or is it a knowledge issue? If you think it's a knowledge issue, then courses will solve the problem. But in my view, it is a motivation issue, because today we don't have dearth of finding ways of enhancing knowledge. But if it's a motivation issue, we need to systemically change it. We need to recognize good performers, because if we don't recognize good performance and train and treat everybody as the same, then I think we are not going up. And that's an important factor. So coming back to your fundamental question of private, I think the system has to be, we still don't have, in this entire ecosystem, we still don't have who's a grassroots level coach. What are the qualities which he needs? It's almost like you're telling that I'm producing a maths teacher. Whether he teaches a primary school or a middle school or a high school or a PhD, we are not. The transfer of talent from one to the next and the initial coaches being recognized doesn't happen enough in an ecosystem where coaches are trying to hold back. And I completely agree with Adil sir. The coaches are holding back because their recognition is linked to the player performance. So till the time we say that your kid or your player is your chance to become a high-level coach, he'll want to hold on whether he has the capability or not. Our system would be better off if we actually reward people for giving up to the next level rather than holding on to the next level. I think that's a fundamental flaw. I remember one, I don't want to name the match, but this has actually happened in a real tournament where one of our teams was passing balls to the next players, and the comment was, forward was asking, ball mujhe pass kar, and the defender is telling, aake leke ja. That is the reality of Indian sport. The coaches, grassroots coaches are saying, you find your own grassroots level, you come and take it. And they're holding on, and a defender is trying to score a goal, and a forward is actually saying, you come and pick the ball up from the defender. We need an entire ecosystem which actually follows up And it's a huge challenge, and we need to really act on it. The state has to help the center, the district has to help the state, the government organizations have to be helping the private ones, the private has to be helping the NGOs, and everybody has to work together as a system, and that becomes fundamentally very, very important. Education cannot be seen as different from sport, and sport cannot be seen as different from education. It has to combine together, and all of it is a complex ecosystem of people who need to talk more. And I'm just flagging this issue because this is one of the finest things which Odisha has done, to have the Chintan Shibir. So I'm just flagging this off to actually have, even at the central level, when this happened, I said center has to talk to state. State have to talk to the various ecosystems and railways and services, and all of this doesn't happen enough. And I think this talk is very, very critical, and I think it's important.
Yeah, in fact, fantastically put. Like, you need to let go of things rather than holding on to the things, and so many other aspects. So, in fact, sir, I'm taking the liberty of extending the discussion for a couple of more minutes. So, one thing that you have spoken of is the motivation. So, in fact, we would have loved to hear more about the safety net that you keep advocating most of the times, that such a environment is not there present for most of the athletes who are participating here, because the percentage of success is quite less. It's in fact 1% or less than 1%. So that motivation being the most crucial aspect, and there is no doubt on an athlete having a winner's mindset. So it is there, and especially in the tennis, I can relate, because I think your husband is also a tennis player. Yeah, so there is always the talk of big three that was there, be it the Roger, the Djokovic, and the Nadals. The difference was mostly in the nerves, in their mental aspect, rather than the physicality and the talent that they had possessed. So how much of it is this trait which can be trained, rather than, is it like a genetics that you are born with a winner mindset, or can this be trained? And with relation to the motivation that Gopiji has spoken of, you also stress more on the internal motivation rather than the external motivation, because that is not under your control. So what exactly is this trait, and how can we train our athletes to be having this winner mindset?
So I have a request. I'll ask you to repeat the question, but before that, when Gopi was speaking, I made some mental notes on some important, and thank you so much for, talking about what you did just now in terms of coaches and what's going on in India in terms of why coaches want to keep their athletes and not let go, right? So coming back to China, I've spent about 5 Olympic cycles with them. What I see is in China, although you have a national coach who is doing all that they do, but then they track down all the way to the first coach of that athlete, right? Now we can't forget that coaches of today were athletes of yesterday, and they've played competitively. So for them, recognition matters. Their effort needs to be recognized, correct? So while you're giving your dronacharya or whatever that might be to the national coaches, in the build-up, or rather when you're taking the elite athletes on their final few years, from intermediate to elite, it's very important that you track everything and anything about the athlete you're spending so much money, infrastructure, and time on, in terms of who were the coaches, what worked at what stage. And there, if you map it, you'll actually find out that there's a mentality of things. There's a particular mentality of the coach that worked for the athlete. It's as simple as having just a conversation over tea or coffee or over food. Because young athletes are observing their coaches all the time. And they're responding to it during training, during competition. And during competition, the inner voice of the athlete is seldom their own. It is the significant people in their journey. And one of the most significant person is the coach. And then, of course, the sports scientist and all of that. So if we have a system where if someone wins an Olympic medal, we recognize everyone who were there right from day one, you know, then that takes away the burden or that, over possessiveness. Because like Monal correctly mentioned, it's also about business. So if I'm a grassroots coach and I don't have much support from money, and if this is my bread and butter, as much as I'm passionate and motivated, I need some wins within my group to get more business. Because parents, on the other hand, the stakeholders are looking at this as an investment and a transaction. They want a return of investment. And these are responsible parents. If my child is spending so much of time doing sport, then what is my child getting out of it? I'd rather my child drop sport and do education, because education has straightforward return of investment, you see. So breaking that cycle becomes important. And in terms of processes and systems, we can't, yes, the center has to do stuff which then trickles down to the state and then to the districts and then to the kasbas and taluks or whatever have you. While that takes time, and in every country it takes time, in no country it happens, overnight or within a few months, it's very important then to start educating at the grassroots ground level on how to build systems within there. What are systems that is not just going to facilitate performance, but also facilitate the human behind the performer? What are the systems that are going to build a mentality where they're not chasing a win with an approach of avoiding failure? So you want to win, but your approach could be, let me give my best or let me avoid failure. So avoidance of failure talks a lot about the self-concept of that individual, the self-esteem, the self-worth. And that more than often starts with a little ecosystem around there. So I really had to add those thoughts. Yeah. And now if you could ask the question, I've forgotten.
Yeah, in fact, partly it was there. The whole idea being there is something called as expectation. So expectation kills the charm in any relationship. So likewise, I guess in sports also it is the same thing. Expectation from the parents, expectation from the coaches, expectations turning into pressure actually.
Yeah.
So that being the case, where does the motivation come from for an athlete? Is it more of an external thing or is it more of an internal thing? So of which that is one question which I would like to know. The other thing being, the difference between gold, the difference between a podium finish and a non-podium finish is mostly mental rather than physical. That being the case, can we actually nurture and train an athlete to have this winner mindset? So is it more of a genetic and a natural trait that an athlete can have? So that is what I wanted.
So to answer your previous question, it's about intention and purpose. ठीक? Intention है कि आपकी नियत है, ठीक? But purpose एक expectation होना चाहिए. हम जो भी करते हैं, it's very important that we chase excellence. But we don't have to compare ourselves with others. बहुत ही important है, especially largely if India has to grow from a developing nation to a developed one. And especially knowing that we have so many youth, and when you talk about Gen Zs and now Gen Alphas, ये बहुत ही समझदार, बहुत ही smart individuals हैं. Expectations होना बहुत important है, pressure भी बहुत important है, because एक जिम्मेदारी है, ठीक? But the question is, how can you enjoy while you have the load of expectations? Expectations becomes a load based on your mentality, based on your self-belief, and based on your intention. अगर आपका motivation external है, तब आपके expectations बहुत ही क्या बताएं, selfish हो जाते हैं, ठीक है ना? अगर आपका motivation internal है, तो आप कुछ कर रहे हो, खुद के लिए कर रहे हो, this is where you're pushing your limits, this is where you're chasing excellence, है ना? And again, that builds in a child depending on the achievement orientation of the parent, the significant people around them, achievement orientation of the coaches. So anyone who's in contact with children, what's their achievement orientation? So in my work with children, young athletes, I work mostly with the coaches and the parents than with the child. ठीक है ना? So it really is whether your expectation is coming out of intention or for purpose. So that's very important. Dusra, stress. When we say competitive sport, the whole idea of competitive sport is play with stress, in stressful, or play in situations where there are challenges, where there's a task difficulty, where there's an expectation, where there are certain rules, where there are certain norms. So that is where the stress comes from. So how do you go about accepting the stress and enjoying it? You know, and also for your body to function, physiologically for you to be charged and to be able to give your best. You can't be too relaxed. Mentally you need to be calm because thinking and reasoning is happening here. Body-wise, you need to be pumped up. So is the stress you're experiencing facilitative or debilitative? Facilitative is when you see it as excitement. अगर आप कोई डेट पे जाते हैं यंग बच्चे, तब भी वो स्ट्रेस में होते हैं, एक्साइटेड होते हैं. जब शादी हो रही है या घर बना रहे हैं या फर्स्ट जॉब लगता है, ठीक है ना? बट जब उससे वो गुजर रहे हैं तब स्ट्रेसेस नेगेटिव और पॉजिटिव होते हैं. तो गेटिंग देम टू अंडरस्टैंड स्ट्रेस क्या होता है, एंग्जाइटी क्या होता है, हाउ टू एक्सेप्ट इट एंड हाउ टू चैलेंज इट रादर देन क्विकली गेटिंग इनटू इसको मैनेज कैसे करते हैं, मैनेज क्यों करना है. इमोशनल रेगुलेशन, व्हेन यू लुक एट अ बेबी, उनको स्ट्रेस में डालो तो दे नो नेचुरली उसको कैसे ठीक करते हैं. So this is where again we need to come back to traditional methods of managing it. And जो आपका दूसरा question था वो मैं भूल गई.
I think it's what you have answered, in fact, in this itself, regarding the winner's mindset. So one needs to challenge themselves, one need to have the expectation also, and there should be no comparison, and pressure is positive. It cannot be negative all the times.
Yeah, and winning mindset is about being your best, being excellent. A winning mindset is never about the outcome. तो जब आप अपने बेस्ट के लिए आप ट्रेन करते हो एंड आपका फोकस होता है कि हाँ मुझे बेस्ट देना ही है, स्ट्रेस होगा, हाँ होना भी चाहिए, बट अगर आपका बेस्ट सबसे बेस्ट है तो पोडियम मिल जाएगा आपको. यू हैव टू ट्रेन फॉर द पोडियम बट यू नीड टू परफॉर्म टू बी योर बेस्ट. तो वो जो ट्रेनिंग मेंटालिटी होता है वो कंपटीशन मेंटालिटी से अलग होता है.
So it's more on concentrating on the process rather than on the product. So that's what essentially it is. Yeah. So we are actually running short of time. So one last pointed question to Mr. Choksi would be, not everyone should be working on everything. So what suits you may not be suiting me. That is a basic dictum in any of the spheres, be it economic sphere, be it sporting sphere, or anywhere. So should every state be working on all the disciplines, or should there be this concept of like one sport, one district, say few sports, and one state and few sports, or should we actually go and concentrate on all the ones? Like what exactly is the take here?
I got the question, but if I'm allowed, I'll briefly touch upon the previous.
Yes, please.
See, when we talk of grassroots and numbers, there is a serious dearth of coaches in the country. Probably athletics is the only federation which has created such a large number of grassroots level coaches. And it is very necessary, and I will not want to go into the method of creating coaches through the NIS system right now, paucity of time and other things. But I would like to certainly touch upon an aspect. There's a book which is called Art and Science of Coaching. And grassroots is fine, we can create the numbers for the grassroots and the basic foundation level coaches. But if you pick on what Gopi said, he was desperate. That desperation is a word he chose to use, but he was passionate. And his passion fueled him to continue to train good athletes. It is absolutely necessary to know the science side of it, or the trainability and the training side of things. But what the coach brings, good or great coaches bring to the table is their personal passion and how they can transfer that passion to their athletes as well. So this is the big difference between great coaches and good coaches also. So I thought that's very, very important. And presently, I don't think very few sports in India probably have coaches in that great category. And therefore, we are relying on the foreign talent who may not be as passionate as Indian coaches if they chose to become, equip themselves to become good coaches. Answering your question on should everybody do everything, absolutely not. And every sport will have some kind of specialization depending on region, genetics, etc. It goes for the federation, the government, and the state governments to kind of be able to identify that. There are methodologies for talent scouting. She's worked a lot in China, and probably she's aware that in China at a very, very young age, there is a battery of tests which will tell the state, because that's the state running it, that, okay, this kid is good for basketball or badminton or swimming, and they have those tests so that they segregate like you do it in a factory. We can't do it here. But Government of India, you are aware, has started a talent cluster approach. So that is also slightly in that direction. We're trying to identify regional talent clusters from each individual sport so that everybody is not doing everything. A lot can be talked about on that area, but yeah, in context to swimming, we have done some pilots. We are now about to do that, scale those pilots up in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. We've also proposed to Odisha to, do that. And swimming, when we say swimming, it's aquatics. So there are certain disciplines which are very low-hanging fruits. Like for Odisha, you have a fantastic gymnastics program going. There is a lot of correlation between gymnastics and diving. So if we start at a younger age and identify kids who are good in gymnastics, they could definitely be good in diving. And that's a very low-hanging fruit for aquatics as a discipline at the Asian Championship, and also in the long run towards the Olympic and the World Championship also. Water polo, maybe not. Maybe Haryana, Punjab are the states where we should be looking for water polo talent, because it requires slightly bigger bodies and a lot of other things. So we wouldn't want to waste time, energy or money on trying to build a water polo team here, but certainly. And if you have noticed in Odisha, all your good performances at national level are coming in breaststroke. Somebody needs to see why. So within the events in swimming also, which are the events that are best suited to the gene pool? Thank you.
Yeah, so as a concluding and a closing remarks.
Just add to what he said.
Yeah.
You can also now do DNA testing. So we've started doing DNA testing for our athletes. The only problem we have is that we don't have data. We have only Caucasian data is available worldwide. So we are now building a database to figure out which athletes would be more attuned to which event. He talked about gymnastics. Odisha is doing well in gymnastics. They should be trying pole vault. If they're doing well in gymnastics, then that's one of course, presently you're doing okay in sprints, but that may not actually be the event. To me, it could be that it's middle and long distance because the tribal people, etc., are strong. It's very similar to Africans who do long distances every day to go to school or whatever. But again, DNA testing would be a more scientific way of trying to do a faster to, crush your period.
Yeah, so objective way of identifying like what suits our bodies and what's our genetics and all. So as concluding, as already told, like we have short past our time that has been given. So you mentioned that we have already reached the tipping point. The tipping point was where Neeraj Chopra has achieved gold. And after that, you say the two things that a country requires, one is a belief and patience. So we have been patient for quite long, and where exactly do we stand, hoping that we win the bid for hosting 2036 Olympics? So are we going to have more numbers of medals in the Olympics? Or are we going to clock the sub 10 mark in the sprints and all in the 100 meters? What exactly?
I have no doubt that you can do a sub 10. I mean, but you'll have to see where the world has gone by then. They're probably sub 8. So I think we'll have to, let's not get into specifics. But I think if you're looking at 36, you're already too late. You'll require 4 Olympic cycles. So if you start now, you'll be probably ready by 40 if you put all the blocks in place now. Which means to me a good talent identification program, a good development program from talent identification taking junior into elite, creating that whole ecosystem simultaneously, getting a proper annual calendar and competition, and something as simple as NITJAM, which is probably the largest grassroots level program in the world run by Athletic Federation. The Athletic Federation arranges to pay for, through sponsors, for all the athletes, train, travel, food, accommodation, everything. And I'll give you again Odisha figures. In 23-24, only 57 athletes from 10 districts participated. You have 30 districts. And your quota is 13. Means 390 athletes could have participated for free. In 24-25, it reduced to 50 athletes. And from 8 districts. It's the worst in the whole country. These figures are the worst. So, this is what I'm saying. Even when you have the opportunity of sending your athletes for free, and if they are not sent, you have a serious problem. So I think you need to fix the structure. And I said you need to fix the processes and the systems. If those are fixed, you will get people coming up. So let's not look at one event, let's look at what can we do process-wise. And how can we fix the process so more and more athletes come to the top. So Neeraj, Duti Chand has run NITJAM. You take any of these top athletes, they've all run NITJAM and then been spotted at NITJAM and brought up. 6,500 athletes from 619 districts took part in the last edition, whereas you had only 50 athletes. Now, that is what we need to all work together, not you, but we all, whether it's my state federation or the athletic federation or the government. Unless we all work together, we are not going to be successful. And that's the short answer to that.
Yeah, closing remarks by Gopiji. So regarding like Odisha being there as a national championship in badminton in the coming years, with the HPC running up and running, and we also starting the grassroots development program. So what is the hope that we can carry from here?
I think I'm a huge believer that Odisha has tremendous amount of talent. And I do believe that physicality wise, I think many of us in this room can be good badminton players, but not necessarily maybe if I pick up some sport like a basketball or a volleyball, maybe that number shrinks. So from a very fundamental perspective, the fact that Dutti or Sarbani Nanda are all there, the speed quality is there, somebody like a Dilip was there, so you know that the quality of speed is there, and that's a very important aspect for a sport like badminton. The number of grassroots stadiums actually give us hope that there's a huge potential of people starting the sport up. We need to put systems in place, whatever. The only thing I would think is where some of the sports we are starting new, and if as a country, sometimes we might see the 9 seconds or the marathon records were broken after 40 years. Adil's own record was broken after 18 years. I think our high jump records are not yet broken after the last 20 years. I think one of the fundamental things we can do even in swimming, at least in measurable sports, it's much clearer. Just break our national record every year. Our state records have to be broken every year. Our district record need to be broken here. There's no excuse for not breaking our own records. I think If our world records are not broken, that's some excuse of systems. But boss, if my own athletes have done it 20 years ago, how come I'm not able to do it today with enhancement in all of sports science? I think that if we are to take that as a one fundamental thing and reward our performers at district, state levels, I think every state would do well in each of these, and we will be tapping in our biggest talent pool, or which is our biggest strength, which is our population. I think we need to go wider. We need to go into communities deeper. Our Agarwal community, our Reddy community, or our populations have to state say, he's my fastest Brahman. He is my fastest. Community-wise, you break it up so that people are motivated to take physical activity and sport to that level. And moving from district to state, that's how I have worked my journey. District to state, state to national, I realized, boss, थोड़ा और मेहनत करूँगा तो international हो जाएगा. In the bargain, the challenge which we find in India is, boss, all of sports science is okay. I need job. I need food for tomorrow, because that's a fundamental bigger challenge. People like Duti is here. I think many athletes say, our challenges are not world level athletes. I say, boss, मेरे को job चाहिए. Tomorrow's, and that is how I have played my sport. I think there's a lot more in stake when an Indian plays from a lower middle class or a economically poor strata, because our lives are dependent on it. So I think stress is natural. I cannot say play, passion, fun. No, it's life or death for me. It's war for me. Winning is a war. So there is going to be a lot more. So I think we need to deep dive, look at the entire ecosystem a lot more, and a lot more understanding needs to be done. Piecemeal, we cannot work, and we need deeper understanding and deeper collaborations is what I would end this.
Yeah, such a simple and such an effective prescription that has been given that there is no excuse for not breaking our own records, be it state, district, or national level. I think every one of us, in fact, should strive. Being administrators, I think we need to be pushing our system so that we break our own records. So as a psychological expert yourself, with these many numbers of kids and the amount of, the numbers of children actually showing interest, there needs to be a thing in the curriculum that of the sports psychology that needs to be part of everyone's education system. So with this thing, can you please offer your closing remarks along with this?
So first of all, I love Odisha because I've known Odisha since 2019. I've had a lot of conversations with a bunch of, especially 5 people, and one of them is right there. And I've been following up on developments in Odisha as well in terms of the culture of sports. It's almost there. So Odisha could be a poster child for a positive culture for sports, right? And in talking about that, when I talk about building a positive culture, we are looking at, understanding the athlete, the coaches, and the ecosystem at a grassroots level, 1. And 2, we are looking at achievement orientation. So what is the nature of motivation? External motivation is important, but to what extent is the intention internal? To what extent is the purpose internal, correct? And like you rightly mentioned, and we've been discussing, that is what education can give us. So as much as the coaches need to know basic sports science, it's also important for every child, every child athlete to also understand the basics of sports science. Athletes can't solely depend on the ecosystem to take care of themselves. They also must take responsibility for themselves. When we talk about doping as an issue in India, that's also because there's not much responsibility in understanding what it is right, what's wrong. Similarly, in terms of mentality, similarly in terms of fitness, similarly in terms of recovery, correct? So athletes, coaches, and when we're talking about young persons, the parents, any significant people in their life who is spending a lot of time with that individual also needs to have a basic education on sports science. But overall, the sports science and performances have to be integrated. So the education should also talk about how a nutrition is, connected to biomechanics, which is connected to the mentality, which then is connected back to your peaking cycle. So everything is interconnected. So Odisha could be a poster child for integrated approach to athlete development. And I think education can do that. And it shouldn't be very difficult for you, because when I look at the room, I've been in some of the rooms where the conversations happen. I see most of them are really interested and they look a lot fitter. They have the right questions, you see. So there's already something that's going on for you. If you could just turbocharge this with a little more education, then yeah. And at any point, if you need my help, I'd love to support you guys on this. So.
Yeah, thank you. And Monalji, you had a roadmap for 2028. I think coming in the coming Olympic cycle that is in Los Angeles. So are we looking at any medals in swimming?
No. And there was never a roadmap for 2028. The only roadmap in this sport you can make is for 2036 and beyond. It is a realistic picture. Anybody wants to see a good presentation on swimming will put those 2-3 slides there, but it is fooling yourself. So that's a very straight and simple answer. This is aquatics, particularly swimming, is an extremely high demanding sport. There are no shortcuts. You have to look at your junior talent, put them into good programs. At the junior level, you have to keep things simple. Do not overcomplicate it with sports science. Keep it simple in the sense that have good coaches training your talent, who know what to do with these kids, not somebody who's in it for the short, this thing. But 2028, 2030, we could probably look at something, if we keep the current talent on track without any agendas or personal agendas or coaches having diverse interests. If we can keep that talent on track, we do have some talented athletes who could make us proud at 2030. 2038 LA, we'd be lucky if we even have a qualified, direct qualified swimmer into the Los Angeles Olympics.
Okay, still
that's reality.
We will be hoping against all odds. Still, that some, if not maybe in the podium, I guess we should be there somewhere, at least in the final heats. And also with that hope, we expect that at least from India and from Odisha there will be good swimmers. So with this, we come to a close of the panel one-to-one discussion here, and from the audience and the open mic session starts. So any of the questions?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Colonel Lakra. I'm managing a high performance center under Government of Odisha in Karenga Stadium. Thank you for this enlightened insight about sports through the panelists. My question is to Mr. Gopichand. It is a great honor to speak to you. I've been a big fan of yours. I've been to your Gachibowli in 2009-10 when it was a very humble infrastructure. And from there, how it has come and how you have dominated the world of sports. And your achievements in this field as a player and as a coach has already are par excellence. And we are very proud of you. And it's a great honor to me to speak to you. My question is, sir, you being one of the top badminton player, so you had a very good insight about the technique of the game, the perseverance, the infrastructure requirement, the various challenges which you face as a player in terms of administration and all other sports science and psychologist challenges. And you also gone through a lot of injury, and then also you continued dominating this sport. And thereafter you took to coaching. And there also you have produced and dominated world badminton ecosystem by almost 20% people of India, being the part of the top 30. So I just want to ask you, what was one thing which you want to advise to our coaches, which differentiate a good coach and a great coach, sir. You being one of the greatest coach. You were mentioned by the International Olympic Committee in 2019 in the Lifetime Achievement. You are the only coach in India who has been honored by that. So we are very proud of you, sir.
Thank you for the kind words, first of all. I think for all of us coaches, I think there's so many variables outside of the coaching field which are very difficult to control. But I think the most important thing would be that when you're there, try to be the best versions of what you can be and show to the world what best you can be. I think that's an important thing. When you get onto the field, be it showtime, and it should be the best version. I think people who see you should say, wow, this is how coaching should be. And that's how you have to increase that quality day by day. You're not in control of what athletes you coach, what are the various things which are happening outside of it. But I think your intensity has to be on court, and also post that, I think, on how you prepare for your next sessions. These are very important things. See, one of the things which I have done after my coaching courses, not that I required to, but I've attended a lot of coaching classes which have helped me become the coach I am. So a lot of sports science, nutrition, psychology I've attended, and those things really help. So self-improvement helps. The most important thing is your relationship with the athlete. And I think that's something I believed, I thought that these are my own kids. And that is where I'm able to give them or learn for their sake. They wanted something, I got it from them. I didn't bother where I got it from. Luckily, I had the name and the fame of an All England champion, so it made things easier. It's not easy for all of the other coaches, I would say. It's a hard work. But I would say coaching, and when I say coaching, the whole of the sports science ecosystem needs to be respected. We cannot have administrator driven or led ones. We need to have coach-led, athlete-centric, sports science-driven models where the administrator makes it easier for the coaches to work. That is how the ecosystem should be. But today what is happening is that if your athlete is bigger than the coach, the athlete drives the system. If the administrator is bigger than the coach, the administrator, like sometimes a journalist is heading it, sometimes a 3-member ad hoc committee is driving that call. So I think those things have to change. You have to inverse it in a system which is coach-led, athlete-centric, system-driven. And I think those people have to have the knowledge of what is happening. So I think there is a big role of coaches in this ecosystem, and they are the driving forces. And I'm not saying it from an empowering perspective, but from a responsibility perspective. This whole thing has to change. I think the coaches have to be the drivers of this. They have to be really motivated and knowledgeable. And I think, as Sanjana has mentioned, we need to figure out systems and ways in which we can reward, recognize, and keep them motivated in the system for a long period of time. Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, namaskar. Sir, myself Dr. Satyan Tandi, and I am a District Sports Officer, Sambalpur. And sir, my first question is to Sri Adil Sumariwala, sir. Sir, in your talk, you are talking about sporting culture, and I have seen rural sporting culture and rural talents in Sambalpur. Sir, the talent identification, what we are carrying, we are more focused on volunteers, those who volunteers for talent identification or those who want to play. Sir, I have seen those barriers in rural students, those are younger children, that their economic condition, sir, their education, and most importantly, sir, their hesitation. Sir, what will be your advice to go beyond those barriers and go beyond this volunteerism for sports talent identification, sir?
See, today there is volunteers because you don't have enough people to do it. You need professionals. Talent scouting is not an easy job. talent scouting is a very professional job. You have to actually have the eye for talent scouting. You have to have the knowledge for talent scouting. For example, I just said when he talked about gymnastics and diving, similarly gymnastics and pole vault. So immediately if you see a child in your district who is doing a certain sport or is good at something, you immediately start looking in which sport can I fit this person. Today you will have volunteers. We don't have professionals, but the volunteers are good. There are lots of very good volunteers who actually have an eye and who can do it. So it's going to be a combination of it till we can get more professionals into the system.
Yeah,
Hello.
I'm Keshav Kumar, a retired IPS officer from Gujarat Cadre, served in CBI and Interpol, presently advisor to Government of Assam, and PhD in forensic psychology, Dr. Kiran. I am trying to demystify forensics application all over. I'm trying my hands on sports. I'm grateful to the minister who spotted this thing and gave me an opportunity. My question is directed to Mr. Swariwala and Dr. Sanjana. Well, when we have discussed on this issue, I have one suggestion to make, that presently what has happened, the top performance of athletes is not limited to the demand of fame, public recognition, sponsorship and prize money, but genetic inheritance. Having done psychology and forensics, I think genetics plays a major role. In recent years, we have witnessed specific tests that identify a person's athletic talents. We have mentioned about this. I would like to narrate one example here. I belong to Gujarat. When I was SP Junagadh, we used to have one tribe called Siddhis. They are from the African descent. The Nawab of Junagadh had got them for guarding their palace. Now they are naturalized Gujaratis and they are excellent sportsmen. So I would strongly recommend if we can have something DNA testing for talent acquisition. I think that can play a major role. Now my question would be, is Odisha considering to do this? That is one. Secondly, now a question about DNA is over. Now the question is about forensic psychology, about the psychology part. Can there be a synergy between genetics and psychology for talent acquisition? I think if this is done, I think the entire problem of talent acquisition can be taken care of. So these are my two questions. And one more, with regard having served in the CBI, I have seen corruption at very close quarters. How are we going to address this issue? That should also be a part of the Chintan Shivar. How to investigate such cases. This crime in sports. These are some of my suggestions that I would like to tell to be for all of you. And I want to seek answers for this. Thank you so much.
Could you repeat your first question to Mr. Adil again?
Yeah, this synergy between psychology and DNA, genetics for talent acquisition.
Yeah, that was the psychology question, but you had the first question, which was more Mr. Adil's.
So, okay, I'll give you one part of it. Genetics in India is at very, very infancy stage. So we don't have data. Athletics Federation hardly a few months ago has started collecting data and doing DNA testing. Nobody else is doing it in the country yet. So till we get sufficient data, we are not going to be able to pinpoint and say, because there's only Caucasian data available across the world. We don't have any other data. On the psychology part, I'm sure she'll be able to explain better. On corruption, I mean, I think corruption is everywhere. There's corruption in the country. When corruption in the country will stop, corruption in sports will also stop. And this corruption in sports is a misnomer. What corruption? When you talk about corruption, there are two parts to it. One is in government and one is in federation. Federation has no money. So federation does chindi chori. It'll steal tracksuit, it'll steal some spikes, shoes. Federations have no money. Then if you're talking about infrastructure, the federations don't do infrastructure. Somebody else is doing infrastructure. So this whole sports corruption is a total misnomer, and you blame sports people for it. It's not the sports people who have not even 0.1% of the corruption. Infrastructure is done by other bodies. So I think you need to look there and not bring it up in a sports seminar, but bring it somewhere else. Because this is total misnomer. Sports is corrupt. Nahi hai. 0.01% hai compared to the total corruption connected to sports in the country. So I think we need to separate, sir, these two. And you've been a very senior IPS police officer, and you know these things. The similar question I was asked at the IAS Masuri, Lal Bahadur Shastri. No, sports is corrupt. अरे भाई कहाँ है, पैसा ही नहीं है फेडरेशन के पास, तो क्या करप्शन करेगा, वो चिंदी चोरी करेगा.
Sorry. Now about the DNA and psychology, there is a link. It's scientifically established. I think the bigger question for us is, elite athletic journeys are extraordinary journeys, right? It's not easy. At least the Olympic medalist I've worked with, I haven't come across one medalist who has told me that they love waking up at 4 a.m. They love missing birthdays or fun, but they do it for the passion of sport, correct? So the question is, is our goal to kind of build greatest of all athletes who are a poster to everything good there is, to sports, to physical movement, to play, correct? Or is the goal broken souls? What I have understood in my journey of 26 years is when I meet my clients the first time, more than 75% of them are mentally ill. This was not because they had a history of mental illness, but this is what sports did to them, correct? So their journeys are so traumatic, and they're so passionate about what they do, but also their achievement orientation is so outcome focused that that's where they land, correct? Now talking about genetics and your motivation. So let's say you have someone with the best genes there is. That does not mean automatically this individual will take on elite sport. They'll enjoy the journey. So why are we even looking there? Right? So let's go neutral. Let's not bother about whether they're genetically endowed or not. Let's not bother about are they coming from a particular region or not. Let's allow children to play. Let's allow them to play a lot of sports. Let it be done at the school level. And then, the ones who are made for sports, they will emerge. And like it was correctly said by Gopi, in terms of talent identification as well, what are your markers? Motivation, again, what does the child know about, whether they want to become an elite athlete or not, right? So the link is there, but does that matter is the question. So I'll leave it there.
Add a practical example of what both of them said. In swimming, we have a foreign expert who has worked a little bit on DNA testing, and we have done pilots, and we were not doing anything very hi-fi. I mean, fundamentally at that young age, and that fellow has worked with some German scientists who have a little bit of experience, so that kind of links into the Caucasian data. But the only thing we were testing, which connects to Sanjana's thing, the gene that was testing was for whether this individual has a tendency to be a worrier or a warrior. Yeah, see, so this kind of gives us a little bit, if it is accurate. I mean, we don't have hard data on that, we just started, but whether this individual is a warrior or a worrier. And that is a certain type of gene sequencing which was being tested. Time will tell whether we are on the right track or not.
Sorry, can I just, yeah. So the gene does tell you that, but that's actually talking about whether an individual can get addicted to something. So we don't want individuals that are addicted to sports. We don't want people that are obsessed. We want passionate individuals because they keep it positive, one. And two, even your fingerprint can tell a lot about an individual, whether they're trait anxious or not. But that does not mean that if an individual is trait anxious, they can't be their best. It's just about how they manage that trait anxiety. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't want to leave an incomplete discussion there.
We won't be taking any more questions. So what we will do is there is ample opportunity for every one of us to interact with the panelists during the tea time as well as tea breaks and the lunch breaks. So we'll be ending this one wherein every one of us know one of the very famous film personality, Rajamouli. He has produced a RRR movie. So on a similar note, today one of the very eminent sports personality here, Mr. Gopichandji, has also given a perspective to us, which is a RRR perspective, having a responsibility, reward and a recognition perspective that one needs to have. So we'll be ending this session on this note, wherein every one of us, be it the administrators, be it the public representatives and other industrial bodies, so we will work for a system which will be coach-led, athlete-driven and sports science-driven approach. So we hope that every one of us will see that whatever efforts that we are putting into will result in we as a country and we as a state achieving the medals at international and national level. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being.
Thank you so much. May I request the panelist and the moderator to kindly come forward for a group photograph. We'd like to thank our panelists for sharing the perception, wisdom, and enlightening us with their experience. Thank you so very much. And we'd like to thank Director Sports for wonderfully moderating the session. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we shall break for lunch, and I shall request all of you to kindly gather around by 2:30 again for the rest of the sessions. I'll request all of you to kindly join us back by 2:30 p.m. Thank you so much.